I'd like to begin today's presentation by introducing our speaker, Debbie Foster. Debbie is a partner with the Infinity Consulting Group, where she specializes in technology, process, and management consulting for firms all over the country. In addition to regularly speaking for the bar associations and other organizations on these topics, Debbie is very involved with the Law Practice Management section of the ABA, serving on the Education and Publication Boards, and was chair of the ABA Tech Show in 2010. Debbie resides in Tampa, Florida. And at this time, Debbie, are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's all yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. And thank you all for attending. We've got quite a crowd today, and the number just keeps on climbing. So very quickly, I just want to make sure that everyone has this link, and I'm going to put this up at the end as well for people who join late. But you can download this exact presentation from this website. And Lexis is also going to send this presentation around a couple days after the webinar with a follow-up email. So if you can't get to it, you can feel free to email me, or you'll get it when you get your email from Lexis in a couple of days. So it's just affinityconsulting.com/8things. So while we're waiting and more people are joining, I just want to give you a little bit of intro and background and talk for just a minute about why are we here. You know, things are changing in the practice of law, and we are getting questions from our clients almost every single day about figuring out a way to do it better, building a better mousetrap. The times are changing, the clients are changing, the client requirements are changing, the clients are becoming smarter about what they want and about how that service can be delivered to them and how much that service should cost. So in our quest to figure out how to build the better mousetrap, we've always really looked to technology to do that. We've looked to technology. Maybe we'll just buy a better software program. We'll buy a different software program. Or maybe we'll hire 3 more people, and if we hire 3 more people, we'll be able to build that better mousetrap. About 4 years ago, I was working with a firm doing some consulting work for them, and they came into a meeting one day. The managing partner came into a meeting and handed me a proposal and said, I think we want to hire these people. And it was a proposal from a manufacturing consulting company, and it was how they could come into his law firm and help him build a better mousetrap, essentially. Come in and look at what they do, look at how they do it, and help them with better ways to work the same process that they were currently working. So I was very leery and skeptical, and it was all about Lean and Six Sigma, which I had heard about but had certainly didn't have any kind of experience in implementing it. We only work with law firms, and it's not something that we see very regularly. So that evening, I went to Barnes & Noble, and I bought every book that I could buy on Lean and Six Sigma, and I read all about it, and I was like, oh, you know, it's all about manufacturing. I'm not sure that this is really going to help, but if that's what the firm wants to do, I'm happy to help. Well, very long story short, the end of the process came, and we learned a lot of things. We learned that not every single part of Lean and Six Sigma can be implemented in a law firm to make things better. However, there are many, many concepts within Lean and Six Sigma that are really helpful to a firm. And with that, we launched the Law Firm Revolution, which was our way to say we can take pieces and parts of Lean and Six Sigma and lots of other methodologies and lots of other things that we've seen used over the years successfully, and we can take that to a law firm and help them do more with less. Now, Lean and Six Sigma have gotten kind of a bad rap, and I want to take just a minute to talk to you about what it is before we really get into the meat of the presentation. Lean Six Sigma is a marriage of 2 philosophies. It's not just one. It's 2 kind of smashed together, as you can see from that graphic there. Lean focuses on being efficient, improving how quickly you do things, and eliminating waste, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. And Six Sigma focuses on quality and doing things the right way every time, minimizing the number of mistakes that are made. And those 2 concepts married together bring us Lean Six Sigma, which has many, many benefits for a law firm. Eliminating waste is one of the biggest ones. But in addition to that, we talk a lot about eliminating mistakes, delighting clients, making clients more than happy. Happy is great, but more than happy is even better. Happier employees, and increase profitability, because the bottom line is shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller as the business of law is changing. And so we start out a conversation about Lean Six Sigma talking about one of the most important concepts, and that is value. Because value has historically been defined by the firm. The law firm says, this is the value that I'm going to provide to you. And value has many, many, many meanings. And value doesn't mean the same thing to any two people. In fact, any two people working on the same project could potentially give you different answers for what the value of that project is. And so Lean Six Sigma really focuses on who defines the value, and that is the client. And so one of the things that I have found as I've talked to law firms about Lean and Six Sigma is there is a trip in the customer. There's a lot of talk about the customer and the voice of the customer. And law firms have always found that word customer a little offensive. They're not our customers, they're our clients. So I like to tell you that right up front, because at the end of this I'm going to give you some resources, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some follow-up reading that you can do on these concepts and how you can implement some of these processes. But be warned that you're going to read a lot about the customer, and you're going to just have to translate that in your mind to the client. So what's important is that we understand what the client sees as valuable, not what we see as valuable. And one of the most elementary examples that I can give you about value is pre-printed letterhead. The value, the perception of value, lives with the law firm, not the client, especially in 2013 and probably in 2010 and maybe a little bit in 2005 and not so much in the year 2000. But today, you don't mail very much. I still see people printing things out on pre-printed letterhead and then scanning them in and emailing them, which is really useless because no one ever actually sees that gold bonded pre-printed letterhead. It's so important to understand what the client perceives as valuable and to make sure that you're really focused on that. And so that steps us into the next concept, which is if it doesn't add value, it's waste. Are completely intertwined. So to understand one, you have to understand the other. And it's a lot easier to understand value if you really understand waste. One of the things that we did is we created an ebook called Is Your Law Firm Behind the 8 Ball? The 8 Deadly Wastes That Are Killing Productivity, Profits, and Morale at Your Firms. And this, I have a link at the end of this for you to go download the Is Your Firm Behind the 8 Ball, where we really talk about the 8 wastes. And the concept behind this is there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. So it doesn't matter how efficient the process is for something that the client doesn't see any value in. And in Lean Six Sigma, the concept of waste is defined by these 8 things: defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, extra processing. You might stop and read this and say, overproduction, that doesn't apply to me, clearly manufacturing. Transportation, I don't put anything in a truck and ship it anywhere. I don't have any inventory. Motion, I don't even know what that means. Extra processing, we only do what we have to do. When you look at this list right off the bat, you might think, I don't really see how this is going to apply to a law firm. But what we have found is waste and profit are proportional. The more waste you have, the less profit you have, and vice versa. The less waste you have, the more profit you have. So again, going back to understanding waste, in order to really understand waste, it's important that you really understand value. So value is defined by 3 things. If you think of it in these 3 ways, it changes the client's situation. It moves the ball down the field in the right direction. Something that you're doing is providing value if it's moving the ball down the field the way that you need to be going. It also is valuable if the client's willing to pay for it. And it's valuable if it's done right the first time. And value has to meet all 3 of those criteria. And if it isn't value, it's waste. It's that simple. So everything that you do is either adding value or it's not. And if it's not, it's waste. And waste is everywhere. In fact, one of the concepts in Lean is a waste walk, where you just kind of walk around and you look for these things. You just kind of put your glasses on and go around looking for things that are wasteful. And it's pretty amazing the number of things that you can find just walking the floor and seeing what's going on at your firm. So we're going to dive in a little bit to these waste items, because these are really the 8 things. And then we're going to talk about how you can get out of that vicious cycle of waste. And when I say get out of it, I don't mean that it can ever be eliminated completely, because it can't in our own lives, especially not going to happen completely in our law firms. But reducing waste and continually reducing waste is really the goal. So the first waste is defects, and that is all about mistakes. It's about reprinting things. It's about data entry errors. And when you think about a data entry error, we're talking about data entry errors that make their way from the beginning to the end of a case. So it might be an improper name in a document that doesn't get fixed until someone notices it 14 names later, or an incorrect property description, a legal description of a property, or something like that, where you just simply, it was entered incorrectly and there was no process to make sure that that data was entered correctly. Correcting time entries on billing statements. This is one of my big pet peeves. Every person in a law firm who's entering time has to understand that whatever they type in that box, the client's going to read it. And if the client's going to read it, that means we need capital letters and punctuation and spelling and grammar. We need for all that to be right. And whenever we're entering time, depending on someone else to fix all of those things, we're just creating waste. We're taking a job that one person should be able to do, and we're making 2 people have to do it. Losing files, losing documents, creating even a contract or a document or a pleading or something that requires massive correction. Those are the kinds of things when we talk about defects, those are the kinds of things that are defects in a law firm. The second one is overproduction, doing more than you need to do. So too much of a good thing is not always a better thing. So you might have multiple people working on the same matter or task or project. I'm sure that all of you have experienced working away on something and then hearing someone talking about the exact same thing you're working on and wondering why you're both working on it at the same time. Emailing, faxing things the same multiple times, excessive CCing, that is a classic problem in law firms. I mean, it's a classic problem everywhere because we're all living and dying by our email. So I get CC'd. I sometimes at the end of the day have an email, one email that generated 40 emails, and I really didn't need to see anything but the first 2, and then I could have been taken off. So really using caution when you're deciding who to loop in on your emails. Producing unnecessary document, making too many copies, doing more research than is required. And that could be waste for the firm, costs for the firm that you're spending that you didn't have to, or waste to the client when it's getting billed back to the client. Another point of big frustration is waiting. Waiting for the copier, for the scanner, waiting for documents to be reviewed, waiting for a reply to an email, getting to a place in a project where you can't do anything else until you get an answer back from someone. And understanding that you are either the waiter or the waitee. So the faster that you reply to emails, especially when you know that you're a bottleneck and the person can't move forward until they get an answer from you, that eliminates waste on the other side. So waiting for a client to provide documents. And another one that we see all the time is slow computers. Insufficient technology that just does not meet the needs of the firm. And those things are so costly. I think that there's been so many studies done about how long people wait, these what we call the valuable half seconds. When I click on open to open up a document, it takes 11 seconds. And then I click on the client's folder and it takes 5 seconds. And then I click on the folder that I'm looking for and it takes 8 seconds. We talk about how many times a person in production, a paralegal, a lawyer, a legal secretary, how many times they do that every day. And really getting a good understanding for what technology can do from a ball and chain perspective, holding you back and not allowing you to do the things that you need to do. Really, really important to visit that. Another one is non-utilized talent. This is something that I am absolutely guilty of. You know, if I do it, it's going to get done right. And letting go of the vine, I'm not very good at that. And that happens a lot in law firms. so not asking people or allowing people to do things that they're perfectly capable of doing, even understanding that they might actually make a mistake, and you might have an opportunity to get in there and help them and train them to be able to do that better. Or taking a paralegal or an associate and having them do filing or copying documents or clerical work when they could be doing something of much higher value. Placing someone with inadequate skills in a position without training, and then they fail, and then we get mad because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know what they're talking about. A wise person once told me that every employee that is not performing is my fault for one reason or another. I either hired the wrong person, or I didn't properly train them to do their job. One of those things. It's not anything in between that. And then one of the other things that I think happens all the time is acknowledging people's contributions to the firm. It just doesn't happen the way that it should. And so I would really encourage you to look at the talent that you have. Let people work to their highest potential. Mentor, pour into them anytime you can, so everything can continue to be worked at by the most appropriate person, and that will eliminate some waste in your firm. Transportation, any excess unnecessary movement, needing to walk to the central copier or scanner. I don't know, I'm sure some of you on this call have heard Jim Calloway speak before because he's spoken all over the place. But Jim Calloway is a practice management advisor for the Oklahoma Bar Association, and he has a famous quote that says, having a centralized scanner makes as much sense as having a centralized waste basket. It is no different than having someone get up from their chair and going to find that central garbage can. Give people a scanner at their desks. I'm holding this piece of paper in my hand and I'd like to scan it. I'm going to put it in there, push the button, scan it. It's going to appear on my screen and I'm going to save it where I want to save it. That 30 seconds takes way less time than the 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, or 20 minutes it takes to walk over to wherever that centralized scanner is, and then whatever happens in between the time of walking there and walking back. Moving data from one system to another to keep multiple forms in the same place. That applies to people who say, I'm going to keep all my forms on my hard drive because whenever I share them with the rest of the firm, they screw them up. So whenever I make a change, I've got to change it here, and then I save it back out somewhere else. Updating client records in multiple systems. That happens all the time. We don't have systems that talk to each other, or we are letting everyone decide how they want to keep track of contact information. So if there are 10 main contact lists on these 7 different computers and these 3 applications, when something changes, there's someone who has to make sure that it gets changed in 10 places. Definitely not an efficient use of time. Inventory. Another thing that you might say, we don't really have inventory, but you do. One of the things that you have is work in process. And work in process is an interesting topic to talk about when we talk about inventory, because I like to talk about it as 2 different things. First, it's the work that you've already done that you haven't billed for. And you may not have billed for it because it's not the end of the month yet, or you may not have billed for it because you haven't reviewed the pre-bills yet, or you may not have billed for it because the client's upset and you want to fix one more thing before you get the bill out. There's a lot of reasons for not billing for it. But one of the other things that I think is a really important point to address with your timekeepers in your firms is the work in process that exists in their heads or written down on a piece of paper that is not in their system technically didn't happen. Because there's a chance that they're going to forget to enter it, and there's a chance that it'll never make it from the piece of paper into the billing system, especially in firms that don't have strict requirements on time entry. So I'd really encourage you to get everybody to contemporaneously enter their time. That gives you a much better grasp on work in process, and I'll tell you, I could talk for an hour about how important it is to return pre-bills in a timely fashion and how many firms don't do that and how many firms drag their billing process out for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And in fact, you don't even finish billing before it's time to start billing again. So that's one inventory problem. Not closing out files at the completion of a matter. So you don't ever know how many active files you have, because when you open your case management system or your billing program, there's just thousands of files that are sitting there, some open, some closed. You don't really have a good idea of what you're working on. Keeping too many copies of documents. I have had to look for documents inside of a paper file and always notice, there that is, oh look, there it is again, oh look, there it is again. Drafts, those kinds of things. We're just wasting time looking through those piles, double hole punched, stuck on the brad clip pieces of paper. Having hundreds or thousands of emails in your inbox, another inventory issue. Another thing I could talk to you for an hour about is that I don't go to bed at night until I have 0 emails in my inbox. Now that doesn't mean that I do everything that needs to be done, but I use a task list for a task list, and I use my email inbox to get emails. When I get them, I either forward them to someone else to do, I answer them and do it and mark it off of my list, I add it to my to-do list if it's something I need to do later, or I delete it. That's it. Those are the 4 things that I do, and I am diligent about making sure that my emails are cleaned up. For those of you who think I could never do that, I get about 250 emails a day, real emails a day. That doesn't include all the junk mail that most of it gets filtered out. So it's a time commitment. It's a huge time commitment, but it's something that you can do because there's nothing more overwhelming than coming in the morning to 7,000 emails in your inbox and wondering what has fallen off the page that you read yesterday or the day before, the week before. You thought, oh, I really need to get back to that. And then again, outdated equipment is another inventory issue. You know, it is really hard to be efficient when you're using outdated equipment. Motion. There's a quote by Henry David Thoreau, it's not enough to be busy, the ants are busy. The question is, what are we busy about? So, you know, when you say to me, but I go and I look and everybody's so busy all the time, everybody's going here, there, running around. Well, most of those people are looking for things, looking for files, looking for information. So motion is not necessarily good. People moving around does not necessarily mean that they're getting work done. So the real question to ask here is how much of that motion is necessary? How much of that motion is because we've decided because this person has been in their cubicle for a long time and they don't want to move anywhere, that it's okay for us to put the paralegal that's working with this attorney 9 cubes down, so every time she wants to talk with that attorney she has to walk down because that one person doesn't want to move. I mean, think about how your office is laid out, how many times people have to get up and move around. Motion goes back to the centralized scanner again, and even from a copier perspective, you know, if I have a document in my hand and I need another copy of it, I can just, it's 2 pages, I can just as easily scan it and print it to have a second copy, then get up from my desk and walk over to the scan, copy, fax printer and make a copy of the document. So really think about motion and think about what's necessary and what's just excessive. Extra processing. You know, another great quote is, costs do not exist to be calculated, costs exist to be reduced. And so extra processing, making extra copies of things. We have a client that we worked with that was buying these very, very expensive folders to put documents in, only to find that when the clients got home, they took the documents out of the folder, threw the folder away, and put the documents wherever it is they put the documents. Turned out to be something that really was not of extra value. Another great example of extra processing is every client has their own bill template because that's the way we've always done it. And so billing takes so much longer than it needs to. And I see that regularly and ask people, how come you have so many different bill templates? And they say, well, it's required by our clients. And almost every time I found, with the exception of task-based billing and electronic billing, I found that it's actually not required by the clients. It's something that someone decided a long time ago, and we've just always done it that way, so we continue to do it that way. Now, that's the 8 wastes of Lean and Six Sigma. And so the next thing we're going to talk about is what do we do about all of that? So I have the Rubik's Cube up here because when I got a Rubik's Cube, there was no such thing as the internet, and I couldn't go and do a Google search on how to solve the Rubik's Cube. But one of the things you'll find if you go look now and see how to solve a Rubik's Cube is that you don't solve it by picking a color and trying to solve that color, and then the rest of it just miraculously solves. The Rubik's Cube has to be solved by looking at all sides of the Rubik's Cube. And that's really true about fixing process at a law firm as well. It's not just about fixing one of those things. It's really about taking a holistic look at your firm. So we're going to talk about now 8 steps to moving from where you are now to where you might want to be. The first thing is defining who you are. Taking a couple steps back to say, who do I want to be? Who does this firm want to be? What kind of clients do we want to represent? What are our core values? What are our mission statements? And how do we really define who we are? That's not an easy thing to do. And having recently gone through that at my own company, I can tell you it's really a challenge. It's something that you really have to stop and think about. Who are you and what is it that you want to do? But in this whole process, jumping into the middle and starting to fix that one problem right over there usually creates 3 or 4 more problems. So stopping and making sure that you really have identified who you want to be is step number 1. The second thing is, what do you do? What are you really good at? One of the things that I find is a common issue in law firms is when I say, what is the most profitable practice area? People have different answers with no data to support their answers. It's just the gut feeling. And oftentimes the gut feeling is what you spend most of your time doing. That's where the gut feeling comes in. And so it's really important when you're looking at what practice areas you're in and what even subsets of a practice area you're in, that you find a way to get some data about how profitable those practice areas are for you. For example, if you're in a family law firm, you might find that you think one of your most profitable areas is prenuptial agreements. But in fact, if you really dug in and looked at the numbers, you would find that they cause a lot of problems and headaches for you, and you don't make very much money doing them. And those are the really tough decisions. Do we keep doing that, or do we not do that? So do you know where you make the most money? Can you really go and look at the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule? Is it true in your firm that 80% of your clients generate 20% of the revenue? In a lot of firms, in fact, in the majority of firms, the numbers are right around that area. And the 20% of the revenue are typically the clients that cause you the most problems. So really looking at what you do and who you do it for is critical. And I always ask why multiple times. When we're doing an exercise like this and helping people really understand where they make money, what kind of business they're doing, what kind of areas, how the fee revenue breakdown goes by area, we start talking about what do you really want to be doing 5 years from now. I ask why 5 times at least, and 5 times is the 5 why exercise is a 6 Sigma exercise to determine the root cause of a problem, especially when human beings are involved. It goes to the whole, if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the right answers. And so we use this tool actually in a lot of different things. Someone says to me, then after I'm done with that, I take the documents and I put them in a UPS envelope and I overnight them. And I say, why do you overnight them? Well, I don't know. I mean, Angie trained me right over there, and she told me I should overnight them. Okay, well, let's go ask Angie why we overnight them. Angie, why do you overnight those? Well, that's just, we've always overnighted them. Okay, well, does anyone have any idea why, like what would be our options? Why might we overnight them? Well, probably because the client wants them. Okay, is there any reason we give those documents to the client? I don't know, let's go ask the attorney. We go in and say, why do we overnight these? Attorney says, I have no idea why we're overnighting them. We shouldn't be overnighting those. And we find that it's a little bit of the operator game. I told this one person how to do it, and they told someone else, and they told someone else, and they told someone else, and that's just how we do it now. And it's a little bit of just not really examining why we do things. And that's whether it is why we practice this type of law, why we take this kind of cases, why we process these documents in this particular way. So are you sure that's what you want to do? And you're really sure, and you've really asked yourself why you want to do it. The next thing is, how are you going to do it? So building a process, understanding how things get done, tossing out all of your preconceived notions of the way that you've always done it. And I know that every one of you has probably said it, and for sure every one of you has heard it when you say, how come you do it that way? Someone comes back and says, well, that's the way we've always done it. So a couple of things to think about, because this is a really, really important part of this process. And this is really, when you get to this stage, this is when you can really start to utilize the Lean Six Sigma tools. How do you do it? And some of it is process mapping. So you see a very basic one. This woman's drawing on a piece of glass, a little process map of how we do it. And I'm never, ever caught up in the details of, well, I can't map that out until I learn how to use Visio, or I've got to put it in a PowerPoint slide. Do it with a pen and a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. It's really just about diagramming out how you do things. A lot of times the way that you do things now, you do because of a person that was in the process who wanted them done a particular way. You might do it because of the technology you use. We have to do it that way because that's the only way this program will allow us to do it. And that way might be terribly inefficient, but the only way because of the application that you're using. And sometimes it's just a culture thing. People just don't like to change. So consider saying, today is a new day. If I were creating a brand new law firm and I had to prepare a will package for a client, how would I do it? Forget, it doesn't matter what software programs I use. If I were just starting fresh, today was my first day, and I wanted to decide how will I deliver this service to my client, how would I do it? And if you start off like that and you really think out of the box and you challenge people, because it happens all the time. We sit in, we do things like this, and people say, well, we're not going to be able to do that because we use this product and this product won't let us. And we say, no, 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 no. We don't have a product. We're designing this from scratch. We're talking about, in the perfect world, how would this process get done? And once we've defined that process, then we can look at our technology and say, can our technology support this process? And if it can, that's great. And if it can't, then we need to do a little further digging. But it has to start with the process. And then from the process, you know, I always say that we have three kinds of problems in a firm that's really all enveloped by a fourth. And the first one is the process, and the second one is the people, and the third one is the technology. And the fourth one is the culture. And the culture is not the same as the people because there are individual people problems. And all of those people problems all combined together really speak to the culture problem. So it's really four different things: people, process, technology, surrounded by culture. So once you've figured out who you are and what you do, and you're sure about what you want to do, and you start to talk about how you're going to do it, then you need to start thinking about, do you have the right people to do it? I'm sure a large number of you on this call have read Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a great book, and one of the things that is regularly quoted from his book is the quote about the right people in the right seats on the bus. And I often say, you've got to have the right people in the right seat on the right bus, because you might have multiple buses. And so it's not necessarily about a person that shouldn't work there anymore. It's are we using everybody to their highest potential, and are they sitting in the seat that where they feel most valuable and where we get the most value from them. The people part of this is where it can all fall apart. We also talk a lot about the Shirley factor, and if anybody on this call's name is Shirley, I'll apologize in advance. It doesn't have anything to do with a person named Shirley. It's just what we have always referred to as the Shirley factor. And that is the person that works at a law firm, male or female, that has worked there for 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 or 40 years, that knows where everything is, knows who we order all of our office supplies from. They have all of the answers. It's the go-to person. But it's also the person that holds closely the secrets and the challenges in the firm, because they don't always want to see those things change. A lot of times those people are really challenged by technology as well, because they didn't grow up with it, and it isn't second nature. And so now we have these associates coming into law firms that are in their early 20s who grew up literally with a piece of technology in their hand. And it's a real challenge. It's a big culture shift for those two. I mean, that's skip a generation or two, those two people to work in the same environment and have the same outlook on things. So making sure that you have the right people in the right seats is a key part of that. And then you have to think about, can those people that are in the seats follow the right process? And this also goes to the change part. And one of the graphics that I put up in presentations all the time is a gray box that has a star in the middle that says comfort zone, and then a little tiny box that's way off in the upper left-hand corner of the slide with a small box that says where the magic happens. And that's really true, and it's a challenge for all of us all the time to step outside of our comfort zones. And so getting the people, the right people on the bus, to follow the processes that you have designed is a really important part about this being successful. And then the last thing when it comes to building a process is the technology piece. So technology costs money. It's always going to cost money. And you're never, ever, ever going to not spend money on technology. And I say that all the time, and I get, stink eye back. People look at me and they don't like it, and nobody likes spending money, and I get it. I don't like spending money either, and I have to spend money on technology all the time. But it is our new reality, and it's never going to go away. So we have to figure out how to move away from that. And that is not to say that we just open up our checkbooks and write a check for anything that we want, that anybody wants to write a check for. It's about really understanding that technology, in order to have the right technology, the most up-to-date technology that's still under warranty, that we have to spend money to do that. So we have to budget for it, and we have to count on those costs. But technology done right, it should make your job easier. It should help you deliver better services to your clients. It should help you reduce the number of errors you make. It should help you share information. That technology is worth every penny you spend. If your technology is not doing that, there's some potential issues. From a software perspective, if you have purchased a software program that is not making your life easier, one of two things happened. You picked the wrong product, or you didn't get the right training. You didn't have it set up the way that it needs to be set up. These software programs that you get today are incredibly sophisticated and potentially a little complicated. So you can't just buy a practice management program, install it, and tell all your users when they come in on Monday, hey, you guys, this is where we're going to keep all of our stuff, so make sure you enter all the data into that program that we just got. It's never going to work. It's never going to work, and even if they were all inclined to do it, they're going to get quickly frustrated when people don't do it the same way, when people are setting their own rules and setting their own lists of things that they're going to do. So it's really, really important that that investment is made in getting a product that you purchase set up the way that it needs to be set up for your firm, and then training the people to use it efficiently. From a hardware perspective, I get the desire to go cheap, the desire, I get the same Dell catalogs that you all get, where it says a server costs $795 right on the front cover of the catalog. Well, if you want it to actually work, it costs a lot more than $795. That's like saying, here is a car, and all it is the body. It doesn't have a steering wheel, it doesn't have an engine, it doesn't have tires. You can't drive that any more than you're going to use the $795 server to run your business. So it's easy to think that there is a less expensive way to do it. My philosophy is this. I don't want you to spend a penny more than you have to spend. But I also don't want you to spend a penny less than you should spend. Because spending less is a bigger problem a lot of times than spending more. Spending less is compromising on something. If a computer is $399, there's a reason it's $399. There's never an exception to that rule. If you go to Best Buy and you say, why can't I buy that computer? It's only $399. I'm going to say, you can buy it. Just use it at home. Don't bring it to the office. So technology costs money for a reason. Also understand that people don't just show up and know how to use technology unless they're less than 25. And even then, people need to have training on your process. When you bring someone in from another firm, they come equipped with what they learned at that firm and the culture that they survived in at that firm. And if you don't teach them about your technology and your culture, they're just going to take what they already know and try and push it into your technology and culture. That is a problem, especially as you bring the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth person in. everyone just brings with them what they have, and you get this hodgepodge of culture and hodgepodge of technology experience. So I'm going to give you something at the end to give you a head start on really helping people use technology to their fullest, to its fullest. And then the last step is lather, rinse, repeat. Because as with anything, this is never something that you do one time. So that brings us back to philosophy in Lean and Six Sigma and many of the other process improvement methodologies, and it's called continuous improvement. And it's about always getting a little bit better. And you can think about how continuous improvement as it relates to the behavior of kids. You know, you don't get a bad kid one day and they're a good kid the next day. They get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. You can think about that when it comes to personal things like weight loss. But from a business perspective, you are constantly assessing or reassessing a process, planning how you can make it better, implementing how you did to make it better, and then evaluating how that went. And that's the wheel of continuous improvement. It's about never stop looking for a better way to do things. Never getting complacent in, okay, now we have a new, that's the way we've always done it. Because technology is changing every single day. And what the clients are demanding from you is changing every single day. So it's important to always be looking for the better way to do things. And I really think that if you are always striving to do better than you're doing it now, you stand out from the pack. And that's something that every law firm is trying to do right now, is stand out from the pack, to look different than everybody else looks. I'm going to take just a couple minutes before I take questions from you all to talk about two different firms that I know have implemented Lean Six Sigma methodologies. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to give you some information because I think you should go read about it. I think it's important information, and I think that these methodologies are implemented in different ways at different firms for good reasons. There's not a right way to do it, and there's not a wrong way to do it. And some firms come out and say, I just want to take these two areas of focus, these two items of where I see a lot of waste in our firm, and I don't really care about the other six. I just want to really focus on these two. The whole point of this is to really take a few things from here because, like I said, we don't go from bad to good in one day and continuously get better. So Seyfarth Shaw is, they wanted to find a better way to provide value to their clients. They wanted to look at getting out of the traditional model of delivering legal services. And they created Seyfarth Lean. And what they've done is they've put a team of people together in a project management office. And that team of people works with every department and talks to them about how they do business. They listen to what their clients have to say. They get feedback from the clients of that department. They use data to drive the decisions that they make. They map out their processes. They are as transparent as they can be to their clients with an intranet and accessibility to documents and status on cases, those kinds of things. And one of their bullet points in the Seyfarth Lean approach and tools, the last one is continuous improvement. One of the women from Seyfarth who's in the project management office spoke last year. She spoke this year as well, but last year I spent some time talking to her after her session, and she said, it's round robin for me. I start here, I get all the way to the end, and then I start there again, and I get all the way to the end, and I start there again. And that's what her team of people does, is they go to each department, they go back again, they go back again, they go back again, and they constantly find ways to do it better. How does this translate into anything valuable? Well, last week they won 2 awards at ILTA, which is the International Legal Technology Association. One of them was Innovative Law Firm of the Year, and one of them was Innovative Project of the Year. Those are 2 pretty big awards. In June of 2013, they were recognized for work they've done with one of their clients, Nike, innovative strategies that deliver results while keeping efficiency high and costs low, and that is the Value Champion project that was done by the Association of Corporate Counsel. They are being recognized for taking a step outside of the box and taking something that is really not widely accepted in the law firm legal department world. They are taking something like that and really finding a way to add value to their clients. Another firm, which is a client of ours, the Honeywell Law Firm, they've taken a little bit of a different approach. They've partnered with the University of North Carolina, Charlotte's engineering department, and they are committed to training their people to think in a Lean Six Sigma kind of way. They describe it as part of their firm's DNA. They have a lot of large financial institution clients, and what's interesting about that is financial institutions have been living in this world for a long, long time. That Lean Six Sigma, TQM, and lots of other methodologies has been something that they have been doing for 20 plus years. The firm has 1/3 of their staff will be Six Sigma Green Belt certified by the end of 2013, and 2/3 of their staff by the end of 2014. When you go through this training, you pick a project. So one of their teams picked a project, and it was a hearing project, and the process was taking an average of 68 days, and they brought that down to 8 days by focusing on that and really evaluating how the work was being done, what the process was, and really honing in on the things that were tripping them up, and they got that down. I think it's 81% reduction in timeline or something like that. They've been asked to speak at a conference, the Process Excellence Conference, which is a pretty big deal about innovation. And one of the things that I love that the Matt Honeywell, the founder of the firm, says is that Lean Six Sigma allows them, because of the environment that they're in and because they have large financial institution clients who really understand this, allows them to be offensive and defensive. They can play offense and defense. Defense, helping themselves, working with these processes, working within the firm. And offense, helping the client. And that means when they're analyzing their process and they can't get it down to any better of a process, but they look at this one thing that has to go back to the client and they're waiting for X number of days for that to come back, they can go back to the client and say, you know, we've gone from this many days to this many days. We're having a problem with this area right here, and that's actually something that's controlled by you guys. And they've had a couple of clients be very receptive to having them strategize with them and help eliminate those delays. So those are two firms who are implementing Lean and Six Sigma and getting really great results with that. And there probably are hundreds more, but these are two good examples that I'm really familiar with. I want to talk to you about some resources before we open it up for questions. The first thing is, if you haven't read any of Richard Susskind's books, I would highly recommend that you do. Richard Susskind has been the Future of Law book, I think, is about 8 or 9, maybe 7 or 8 years old now, but it's talking about how the business of law is changing. The most recent one is called Tomorrow's Lawyers, An Introduction to Your Future. It's a great